GM Builders, my name is Ann Schnabel, and today we're going to be building a navbar for a blog site. Now, I filmed this tutorial over the holidays, so don't mind the Christmas tree in the background. I was being festive. And go ahead and follow along. Here is the navbar that we're going to be building. You can see that in desktop mode it is a side nav, and in mobile mode it is a top nav. It opens and closes this little menu where we can pick out what page we want to do, and when we are in desktop mode it's open, and when we are in mobile it's closed. So let's get started. We're going to be using Next.js as our React framework for this project. For our CSS solution, we're going to be using Tailwind CSS. We're also going to be using hero icons, as well as React Responsive, which is a library with use hooks for media queries. We're going to use that as well. So to get started, we're going to go to the documentation, and it says that we want to yarn create next app. So I'm going to open up Hyper, which is my terminal of choice, and copy and paste that in there. It's going to ask me what project name I want to go with. I'm going to call this blog demo. We don't want TypeScript, but we do want ESLint. ESLint is like a grammar check for your code. We do want that. And it's downloading and installing all of the packages we need right now. Success. Let us go to our Visual Studio Code or whatever IDE you're using, and we're going to open up the project. And now we have a typical Next.js starter app. If we hit the terminal, we open the terminal and we say yarn dev, we can open up our local host and we see a Next.js default site. And if we go into index, we are able to see that everything that we have in here, get started by editing, it matches. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of everything inside main. We're going to get rid of that style on main. We're going to save it and it goes blank, and that's great because that means that we have an active feedback loop for our project now. I'm going to do some cleaning up. We don't need this file, so I'm going to move it to the trash. We don't need anything in global CSS right now. And looks like we need to install some packages. So Tailwind is the first one we're going to install. We're going to get started with that. We're going to go to Framework Guides and Next.js, and then we are going to install Tailwind CSS, Post CSS, and Auto Prefixer. Now I'm using Yarn, so I'm going to say yarn add, and we're going to add all of that. And it says next we need to init. So we're going to do npx tailwind init. And you'll notice it created a Tailwind config and a Post CSS config. Now we're going to be changing and messing with the Tailwind config, but you can leave the Post CSS config alone. Mainly in the Tailwind config, we're going to be adding content. So where we want our Tailwind to check for class names to change and style the components. And we're going to check inside the pages folder, and we're going to check inside the components folder. Speaking of which, we need to make a components folder. So what we are going to do is we're going to close that, click there, and now we're going to make a components folder. Components are where we're going to put small modular pieces of code that we reuse multiple times. This makes our code cleaner and easier to read, so we're going to do that. Next, we have this theme, and we want to put in, if you're wanting, Tailwind offers a lot of colors choices. However, if you have a brand color, like I am trying to do, you can go to this site called Tailwind Shades and put in your base brand color and hit shade, and you'll see that it gives you shades of this color. So we are going to use this. We want this color to be almost white, but not quite. So we're going to step that up a bit, and that looks good. And then we want this bottom color to be almost black, but not quite. So we're gonna lighten it up a bit, and now it's almost black, but it's not quite. We can still tell it's blue. And we're gonna call this color Ocean. We're gonna copy it, and then we are going to go back to our repo and put in, I'm using Prettier to format everything, so whenever you see code jump on my screen, that's because I've hit Option-Shift-F or Alt-Shift-F if you're on a PC, and that's formatting my code for me. So now we just need to yarn dev again, and it's going to start back up our local host. We're going to see when we refresh it that we've got nothing again. That's good, because we didn't put in the directives. We need to copy and paste the directives into global CSS, and now when we go back, it's going to be white, and that's good. That's what we're looking for. Since we're building a nav, we're going to use the nav tag. Inside the nav tag, we're going to have a class name, and we're going to put background rows 500. We're going to say nav. When we save that, we appear in nav, and its background is rows. But remember, we have our own colors now. So we're going to say ocean. Now we can't really see the nav. So let's go ahead and get rid of that right now and add some content that we want inside our nav. I'm going to make this small because we're going to work on mobile first. Tailwind uses media queries in their class names, and I'm going to show you how to do that, but they go up. So we're going to start with mobile, and then we're going to grow to desktop later on. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some images. I have mine here. I have a favicon, and I have my profile picture. I'm going to put them in the public folder, and I'm going to replace favicon.ico with my favicon, and you'll see that that's going to show up here where the Vercel logo is. When I hit restart, when I refresh it, it changes to my face, and that's very exciting for me. Okay, so now we have our profile picture. We're going to import it. Import, we're going to call it profile pic from public, what was it called? Axe square.jpg. And we're going to copy this image tag and put the source as, put it in curly brackets so we can use JavaScript, and we're going to make it the profile pic. Now we have some content in there. It's yellow, so we scroll over it and it says we need an alt prop. So let's go ahead and add that. Alt is the description of the image. It's very important for accessibility, and it shows people what the image is even when they're using a screen reader instead of looking at the image. So we're going to say Anne's face. She is wearing a bucket hat. And that's good enough. But we noticed that the image is really big, so we're going to make that smaller. And we're going to make it pretty small because it's mobile. We're going to make it width 10. And that's in Tailwind, that's actually 40 pixels, so it's about the size of a finger tip. We're not going to make it a button, but we are going to have a button on the other side that we want to be 40 pixels. Because buttons you want to make at least 40 pixels tall and at least 40 pixels wide so that a finger can touch it. Next, we are going to get that hero icons in here. We're going to go to documentation, and we scroll down. We see that first we need to install it. So I'm going to copy hero icons, yarn add hero icons / React, and then it looks like we import icons like this. So I'm going to copy and paste that, go back to the site, search for the icon we want, which is a menu icon. This bars 3 one looks good. So instead of beaker icon, I'm going to write bars 3 icon, and you see it comes up too, so we know it's real. And I'm going to put bars 3 icon. And now when we save, we should see we need to yarn dev again. Forgot. If you ever get this, it's probably because you're not running yarn, or you're running your script that shows it in the browser. And here is our icon, but it is huge. So let's go ahead and say width 10, that's 40 pixels. We're gonna say text white so we can see it. Now you'll see it's the exact same size as the profile picture here. That's desirable. And we are going to want to add a little more content. We're gonna wanna add and Schnabel. And we're gonna wanna add my handle for Twitter. You can't see them, so we're gonna write text white, and we're going to copy that, put it down here, and we're gonna have this one text ocean 200. So we're gonna be using our color again. Now this one we want to be more noticeable. So we're gonna make it extra large, and we're gonna make it bold. There we go. And under that, we want to make this smaller in comparison, so we're going to do text small, and that hierarchy looks nice. But we don't want to just have these as descriptors, and Schnabel's website, Schnablet is my handle. We want to have those as links that actually go to the websites in question. So if we go to Next.js's website and we put link, we can see that they have this special link component that we're going to use. And if we put it around our paragraph, it now can take an href, and we're gonna feed it https://linkedin.com/in/and-schnabel, which is my LinkedIn page. So you can see when we click that, it goes to the LinkedIn page. But there are two problems. One, this doesn't look like a link. And two, it took us there away from our blog post. We want it to take us there in addition to our blog post. So we're gonna write target equals underscore blank, and rel equals no refer. And when we save that, it now is going to open it in a new tab up here, so we can still keep our blog post tab open, which is good. And we are going to add a hover state and say when it's hovering, we're going to want it to be underlined, and that's going to show that it is a link. We're going to say for mobile we want it text center. That's good. And we want to copy those two over to Schnablet as well. So we're going to copy that, and when we click on Schnablet, nothing happens because we don't have a link around it yet. So let's fix that. And we want this to go to our Twitter. So let's write twitter.com/Schnablet, and you can of course have it go to whatever your Twitter is. So now we've got two working links, takes you to the LinkedIn, takes you to Twitter. That's great. Now we are going to position these items, these pieces of content. And what we're going to do is we don't want them to take up too much space. So we're going to say flex. And we're going to put, we're going to deal with absolutes. Okay, never mind. We are going to say we want this to be relative, and we want this to be absolute, top 0, left 0. When we save that, nothing happens because we misspelled absolute. There we go. We save that, you'll notice that the icon disappeared. That's because it went behind my image. So we're going to copy and paste absolute, top, left, whatever they are. We're going to change left to right, and when we do that, you get over here the icon, which is great. And you'll notice that and Schnabel and Schnablet now are in line with these two items, so it's a lot cleaner. And when we are on mobile, we want to take up as little vertical space as possible so that we can have more content available and visible. So let's go ahead and adjust this a little bit. We're going to make this rounded extra large, and we are going to, instead of top and left 0, we're going to make it top and left 2. We're going to add some padding to the nav. We're going to make it 3. And we're going to make the top and left, right, also 2 over here. And we want this to eventually be a button, but right now it doesn't look like a button because it's not a button. So let's put it inside a button, which is as easy as putting a button around it. And then we want to style it like a button. So we want, when it hovers, when we hover over it, we want the background to change to Ocean 600. And that is now a button. It's a very small button though, so we want the padding to be 2. And now we have a little more room, but we also want the width to go up so that it is still the same size relatively as this guy over here. We're going to round it as well to make it look nicer, rounded full. So now we've got this button here, and it doesn't do anything right now, but we're going to fix that. You'll notice that we have our, you notice that we have our different content pieces now, but we are missing a vital content piece, which is the actual navigation links. We need some buttons that are going to take us to our pages. So we want a button that says all posts, and we want the text to be white so we can read it, and we want it to be a button. So we're going to copy those traits from what we just put on this button, and we're going to put them on this button. So now we've got a button, but it doesn't do anything yet, and that's okay. We're going to add some side padding, and we're going to make the width full so that it goes across the entire screen. We're also going to make sure that there is a decent amount of margin between at the bottom of our schnoblet content and the beginning of our button. So we want, and when you're trying to make something look high-end, when in doubt, add more padding, okay? That's going to make it look like everything can breathe more. Now we want more than one page, so we could copy and paste this 3 times, or we could make a component. Ding, 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 ding. That is what we are going to do. We are going to go to components, add a new component called, in components, we're going to add a new component called navbutton.js. We're going to add, first we want to export it, const navbutton, and we're going to make it a functional component, and we're going to return this button. But we don't want them all to say all posts. We want them to be different. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a variable here. We're going to call it page. And we're going to render whatever is inside page inside this button. Now notice how I am putting this here where props normally go. Normally this is props. We are destructuring it. That's what it's called when you put this inside these curly brackets, to pull out page as a property that we are going to use. Otherwise, another way to do that would be saying props.page, but I really don't do that anymore. Now I just say page, in a destructured. And if we bring in nav button and we use it to automatically import it. That's great. We can pass it a string for page. We're going to say all posts. And now we've got our button, but it's a component now, and we're pulling it from here. We could make more, and we could say, we're going to call this about author. We're going to call this a project that you're working on. I'm going to put a project that I'm working on. And now we've got 3 different buttons here. But you'll notice nav button, nav button, nav button. That's a little repetitive. And as a developer, when you notice things are getting repetitive, that's when you want to kind of build a system for it instead of just copying and pasting it too many times. So I'm going to make a variable up here called pages. It's going to be an array, and it's going to hold all of the pages that we have about the author and, oh, what is it called? Autograph it. And instead of doing this, we're going to copy one of them. We're going to delete that. We're going to put brackets so we know we're writing JavaScript. Call this variable, map it out. And inside this, we're going to put page. So pages is our array. We're going to map it out. So for every page here, we're going to return the nav button, and we're going to put page here. And remember, page is a variable that is inside this array, and so it's going to take each string and render a new button for it. Now what's going on? It says we're missing a key prop. Now a key needs to be unique, so we're going to add the page again as our key prop. And now we've got our 3 buttons, even though we only are returning 1 line of code. And that's really exciting. Let's give them some space. Let's give them some margin bottom 3. Now, 2. I like 2 better. It's your site. You can do whatever you want with it. Now we've got some buttons. We've got a button up here, but nothing really happens when we click any of these buttons. So first, we're going to make it so that these pages highlight when they're active. So when we're on that page, we want it to highlight. So we're going to make this thing called const active and act set active. This is called a hook. We're going to use the use state hook and say we want it to be pages index 0. So pages index 0 is all posts, and we are going to say that that's what we want active to initially be on mount. Now what are we going to do with this? Active is going to be passed down. We're going to give it as a prop to equals active, active equals active. And you'll see I'm trying to keep these in alphabetical order to make it easy to follow. And what's going on? Looks like use state is not defined, so we have to import use state, import use state from React. And now that we have passed down active as a prop, we can use it in here. We destructure it. We can say active. We can say set active. And we are going to say whenever it's active, we want to conditionally render styles. So we're going to wrap everything in brackets, or in curly brackets, and then we're going to wrap it in backticks, and that's going to make it able so that we can write JavaScript inside here, inside this what's called a template literal. We're going to say when active equals page, then we want to have text white, font bold, and when it's not equal to page, we want it to be text ocean 200. I'm going to get rid of this over here, but make sure you don't delete everything. Okay. And now we can see, because all posts is the first index of, is the 0 index of the array, it's being rendered by useState as the first one that's active. And because active equals all posts, it's rendering these styles. But now these buttons still don't do anything. It shows which page we're on, but we also want it to affect what page it's on. So we're going to write curly brackets so we know we are typing in JavaScript, and we're going to say set active equals page. Now, whenever I click, we are changing what is the active page, and that's really exciting. So now these buttons do something. Now let's do something with this button. We want it to open and close this menu. So let's make a new hook called open and set open. We're going to make it use state, and we're going to start it off as being closed. And we're going to say when we click that button, we want it to set open to be the opposite of whatever open is. So that if it's closed, if it's not open, it will make it open, and if it is open, it'll make it not open. That's what this bang here does, this exclamation point. So we're going to go ahead and say we only want to show these pages when it's open. And now whenever we click, it opens and closes it. But we just have a hamburger menu here. It normally changes to an X. So let's go back to hero icons and check out the close icons that they have. This X mark looks good. So we're going to import it over here. X mark icon, copy. We are going to say when button is open, we want to render this icon, and when it's not open, we want it to render that icon. We need to add the close bracket, and we're going to copy all of these styles because we want to. And now it changes based on whether it's open or closed. So now we've got a nice little nav for mobile, but when we make it desktop size, it doesn't feel right. So let's look at the desktop size. That's going to be 768 pixels is the desktop size. And what we're going to do is we want it, when it's desktop, we want nav to be next to the main content. We want nav and main content to be right next to each other. So I'm going to highlight all of those and put them in a div. So now main and nav are in a div. And I'm going to say I want, when it's medium, to use flexbox and put it next to each other. So now we've got, I'm going to put main content here so we can see where the content is. Class name P10. So now we've got the main content and it's next to the nav, but that doesn't really look right. So let's fix it. We are going to say we want the nav to have, when it's medium, a minimum height of the screen. And we want it to have a width, when it's medium, of 250 pixels. 250 pixels. There we go. And now we want, when it's medium, we want to take away the absolute positioning of it, and we want to bring those back into actually, wait, why am I doing that? We don't even want to have these buttons when it's mobile. This button we're going to take care of in a second, but we don't want it here when it's mobile. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and use React Responsive, which is a package that we are going to use to get some media queries in our JavaScript. So we're going to yarn add responsive or React Responsive, open up yarn dev again, start that back up. And we are going to go to the documentation for React Responsive. It looks like we imported this use media query, and we can say is tablet or mobile. Let me put it up here. I'm going to call it is mobile. And we're going to say max width 767 because that is the breakpoint at which it changes to medium. So that's why I'm putting 767 there. And so now we have this convenient variable, and we're going to say, we're going to write some curly brackets so we know we're writing in JavaScript. And we're going to say when it's mobile, do this. And it gets rid of it for us. So when it's mobile, render this button. When it's not mobile, don't render the button. And it can tell when it is mobile or not. So now we have the button there when it's mobile, and we don't have the button there when it's not. So that's great. Now we are going to, let's see here, change the size of this image. We want the width to be 100 pixels when it is big. And we want top, when it's medium, top to be 0, and we want when it's medium, left to be 0. So that moves it back to where it's supposed to be. And then we want these two. I'm going to show you a trick. If you hold down Alt or Option, if you're on a Mac, you can write in 2 different spaces. So we're going to say when it's medium, you want text to be left. And you'll notice that it's writing in both areas. And so we bumped that to text left. But we have a problem. We have no buttons. How are we going to have buttons? They're only there when the button is open, and they're only open when we click the button that is no longer there. So what are we going to do? We're going to use a use effect, and we're going to say when it is mobile, we are going to, when it's mobile, when mobile changes, when it changes from desktop to mobile or mobile to desktop, if it is mobile, set open to false. And if it is not mobile, if it's desktop, set it to true. There we go. Now we've got it there when it's desktop, not there when it's not. And we are going to say we want when it is medium, the text to be left. Now we've got these little guys here. And we're going to fix some padding issues that we're seeing. So it looks like when we're medium, we want the padding to be 4. Or not padding, margin. Margin to be 4. And we also want to put that on medium margin 4. Margin left 4, so ML4. We can just copy and paste that down here. So now we've got a working navbar. Let's go ahead and say when it's medium, we want the margin on the bottom to be 10. Just give that a little more breathing room. And now when we click, it is active, it's visually functional, and we can open and close this when it is not mobile. So good job. If you were following along, you now have a navbar. If you have any questions, find me on social, hit me up, I will answer them. And I wish you all luck in building your fabulous blogs with this fabulous navbar. And we are going to look at how to build the rest of the blog later on. Okay, it's been great talking with you. I hope you have a wonderful holiday, and I will see you later. Bye.